Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sabhabhya Sabhapatibhyascha Vo Namaha. Vagishadhyas Sumanasas Sarvarthanam Upakrame Yannatva Kritakrityas Yustannamami Gajananam Sharada Sharadam Bhojavadana Vadanambuje Sarvada Sarvadasmakam Sannidhim Kriyat Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Namo Narasimhaya Vajradamshtraya Vajrane Vajraya Vajradehaaya Namo Vajranakhaya Cha Vagarthaviva Sampraktau Vagartha Pratipattaye Jagatah Pitarau Vande Parvati Parameshwarau Bharati Karunapatram Bharati Padabhushanam Bharati Padamarudham Bharati Tirthamashraye Bhaje Shri Bharati Tirthakarambuja Samudbhavam Vidhuchodarchanasaktam Vidhushekhara Bharatim Shrutismritipurananamalaya karunalayam namami bhagavatpadashankaram lokashankaram. Okay, let us start with the shlokas for today. Shrimate Shankararya Dhimate Dbhutashaktye Namostvadvaita Siddhanta Sthapanopattamurtaye Vedo Nityamadhiyatam Taduditam Karmasvanushthiyatam Tene Shasya Vidhiyatam Apachitihi Kamye Matistyajyatam Papaughah Paridhuyatam Bhavasukhe Doshonusandhiyatam Atmechhavyavasiyatam Nijagrahat Turnam Vinirgamyatam Sangasatsu Vidhiyatam Bhagavato Bhaktirdridhadhiyatam Shantyadif Parichiyatam Dridhataram Karmashu Santyajyatam Sadvidvanupasevyatam Pratidinam Tatpaduka Sevyatam Brahmaikaksharamardhyatam Shrutishiro Vakyam Samakarnyatam. And now we will come to the shloka for today. Lassie, are you there? Oh, I need to let you speak. Vakyarthascha vicharyatam.
Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Vakyarthascha vicharyatam.
Shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam.
Shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam. Shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam.
Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam.
Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam. Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Shrutishirah pakshas samashriyatam.
Dustarkat suviram yatam.
Dustarkat suviramyatam. Dustarkat suviramyatam.
Shruti-matastarko-nusandhiyatam.
Shruti-matastarko-nusandhiyatam. Shruti-matastarko-nusandhiyatam.
Dustarkat suviram yatam. Shruti-matastarko-nusandhiyatam.
Dustarkat suviramyatam. Shruti-matastarko-nusandhiyatam. Dustarkat suviramyatam. Shruti-matastarko-nusandhiyatam.
Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam.
Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam. Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam.
Aharahar garvah parityajyatam.
Aharahar garvah parityajyatam. Aharahar garvah parityajyatam.
Dehe hammatirujhyatam.
देहेऽहं मतिरुज्यताम् देहेऽहं मतिरुज्यताम्
बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम्
बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम् बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम्
ब्रह्मास्मीति विभाव्यताम् अहरहर्गर्वः परित्यज्यताम्
ब्रह्मास्मीति विभाव्यताम् अहरहर्गर्वः परित्यज्यताम् ब्रह्मास्मीति विभाव्यताम् अहरहर्गर्वः परित्यज्यताम्
देहेऽहं मतिरुज्यताम् बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम्
देहेऽहं मतिरुज्यताम् बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम् देहेऽहं मतिरुज्यताम् बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम्
मोत्तं पूर्णं श्लोकम्
वाक्यार्थश्च विचार्यताम् श्रुतिशिरः पक्षः समाश्रीयताम् दुस्तर्कात् सुविरम्यताम् श्रुतिमतस्तर्कोऽनुसन्धीयताम् ब्रह्मास्मीति विभाव्यताम् अहरहर्गर्वः परित्यज्यताम् देहेऽहं मतिरुज्यताम् बुधजनैर्वादः परित्यज्यताम्.
So first the padacheda vakyarthah cha vicharyatam shrutisharaf pakshah, that is one word, shrutisharaf pakshah samashriyatam dustarkat suviramyatam shrutimataha tarkah anusandhiyatam brahmasmi iti vibhavyatam, or you can take it as brahma asmi. If you want to take it as swarupa grahana as brahmasmi, you can do that too. Brahma asmi iti vibhavyatam aharaha or aharaha garvaha परित्यज्यताम देहे अहम्मतिः उज्यताम बुधजनैः वादः परित्यज्यताम. Okay, and then kind of the shortened version of the meaning, vakyarthascha vicharyatam. So where are we in the sequence of this sadhana panchaka? If you remember in the end, right, we said we went to the guru, right? You have gone to the guru, you have asked him to learn about brahma, which is akshara, right? Brahmeka aksharam arthyatam. And then shruti shirovakyam samakarnyatam. So you are in the process of doing shravana, you are learning what is said in the Upanishads. You have just heard the mahavakyas, you have been taught the mahavakyas, right? Tattvamasi aham brahmasmi, etc. So now what you're supposed to do is vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Do vichara, contemplate on the meaning of those statements, of the statements of the Upanishads. Shruti shiraf pakshah samashriyatam. Literally find refuge in the findings of the Upanishads, as in come to terms with the conclusions of the Upanishads, understand the conclusions of the Upanishads. Dustarkat suviramyatam. Restrain or desist from using dustarka. What dustarka is, we will discuss in more detail. Shruti mataha tarkaha anusandhiyatam. Use the logic that is supported by Veda. So do not do your own games with logic or with what you think is logic, but apply your logic in accordance with Veda. Brahma asmi iti vibhavyatam. Try to understand, this is called nididhyasana, feel that aham brahmasmi. So try to do contemplation or try to meditate upon the mahavakya brahmasmi and its meaning. Aharaha, every day, garva parityajyatam. Let go of garva. What this garva is, we will talk about. Dehe ahammatihi ujhyatam. Ujhyati means to leave. Ujhyatam, may it be left. Dehe, in the body, ahammatihi. I-ness, the feeling of ego. This is the feeling of I-ness is called ego in Western philosophy. So may ego in the body. So this is, the body is the locus of the ego. May that be left. May you not, may the locus of your ego not be the body. May you relinquish the ego being in the locus of the body. Budhajanaihi vadaha parityajyatam. May you relinquish arguments with panditas, with scholars. Okay. So now what does this mean? So we have just heard the Vakyartha, right? So the Guru has just said Aham Brahmasmi, or he has taught you Aham Brahmasmi, and he has taught you Tattvamasi. So now what you have to do is Vakyartha Vichara. Vakyartha Vichara. So Vakyasya Artha, Vakyartha, Tasya Vicharaha, Vakyartha Vicharaha. Doing Vichara of the Artha of the Vakya. Vakyannama kim Padasamuhaha. What is a Vakya? A group of words, right? So and then for that to carry the Shabda Bodha, you have to have Akanksha, Yogyata, all of these things that we talk about when we do Shabda Bodha in Tarka or Vyakarana. You need to have all of those. You need to understand all of those. But that aside, the main problem, or not really problem, but the main granthi, it is called, the main knot that is the problem is the inherent differences between Jiva and Ishvara, right? In all these Mahavakyas, we said Mahavakyas are Vakyas that teach the Aikya of Jiva and Ishvara. So the biggest problem in understanding these Vakyas is how do you reconcile the differences, right? So they say, right, Tejastamo vata viruddha dharmatvat virodhitvam. Just as Tejas and Tamas have different qualities and therefore are different, then in the same way, if Jiva and Ishvara have different qualities, they must be different, right? For example, Tejas, which is light, it shines. Darkness makes you blind. You cannot see in darkness. So if you can see in light and you cannot see in darkness, it follows that light and dark are different. In the same way, if, as we said several times, if Ishvara is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, and Jiva is kinchit jna, kinchit shaktiman, right? Kinchit shakta, ekadesha, ekakalika, then how are these two supposed to be the same thing? So this is the Vakyartha that you have to do. So to understand this, generally we apply something that is called Jahad-Ajahal Lakshana. So there is one concept in Vedanta that is not Vedanta, in Shabda Bodha. Shabda Bodha is the process of drawing meaning from Shabda. How do words carry meaning? Right? The process of meaning being extracted from words is called Shabda Bodha. So the main thing that is applied in such statements in Vedanta is something called Lakshana. So when the Vachyartha of the words does not apply, you take Lakshana. So what do I mean by Vachyartha? So the common explanation that they give in Shastra is Gangayam Ghoshaha. Okay, Ghosha is a village, a cowherd's village, Ghosha. Gangayam, right? Saptami Ekavachanam. Gangayam Ghoshaha. Someone has said there is a cowherd in Ganga. And there is a village in Ganga. There is a village in Ganga. Okay. So here obviously the Vachyartha, namely Ghosha means village, Ganga means the river Ganga. So the village is in the river Ganga. Does not make sense because obviously villages do not exist inside rivers, or if they do, they're not populated. Right? So when the Vachyartha does not make sense, so when the word-to-word meaning does not make sense, then we resort to something called Lakshana, namely the implied meaning of words. So in this case, we have three types of Lakshana, where you have Jahat Lakshana, Ajahat Lakshana or Ajahat Swartha, and Jahat Ajahal Lakshana. These are the three Lakshanas that you have. What does this mean? So these are just technical terms. And what I'm trying to do, or what I will try to do today, is kind of show you a touch of how Shastras apply in the process of Vedanta Vichara. So at least if you can follow along as I say it, regardless of whether you can recall it later, or whether you think you can explain it back later or something, what I'm trying to do today is I'm trying to show you how Shastra Vicharas are done, because this part of it is about Shastra Vichara. This part is about Vedanta and Tarka and how they work together and how they're different and things. So this will be a bit Shastric today, but the hope is to give you a taste of that Shastra. So definitely ask questions in the end if you do not understand, depending on, because there's a wide variety of how comfortable learners are in this class. There are some people who have already been in some of my Vedanta classes. There are some people who have been in classes with me, but not my Vedanta classes. There are some people who are doing Shastra Dhyayana. There are some people who are new to Sanskrita. So I understand that, but I wish to give you all a taste of Shastra, which is why today will be a bit heavy in Shastric concepts. But they will be understandable. I am sure of that. So, all of you are intelligent students. So if we all put our mind to it, we will understand it, no problem. Our rishis have explained things in such a way that everyone can understand it. So we will be trying to do that. So as we said, Lakshana is the way of understanding words when the Vachyartha does not apply. So you take an implied meaning, right? So there are three types. We said Jahat Lakshana, Ajahat Lakshana, and Jahad Ajahal Lakshana. So when the Vachyartha, so namely Vachyartha is the dictionary definition, right? So if you have Ganga, Ganga equals a river, right? Vachyartha is the dictionary definition. So when that is left and a completely different meaning is taken upon, that is called Jahad Lakshana. For example, if you say Gangayam Ghoshaha, there is a village in Ganga, the word Ganga relinquishes the meaning of the river and then instead takes upon the meaning of the bank of the river. So what Gangayam Ghoshaha means is Ganga Tire Ghoshaha is what it means. So the word Ganga Pravahartham Tyaktva Pravahartham Vijahya, right? Jahat Lakshana, right? Pravahartham Tyaktva Tirartham Granahati is what we say. So the word Ganga there, Jahat, it lets go of its normal meaning, which is the flow of the river, and takes upon a new meaning, which is the banks of the river, right? We say the same thing. In the Amazon, there are several wildlife species, right? The Amazon is a river. What we mean by the Amazon is the Amazon basin, right? The space around the Amazon, right? So we use the same things today. These things, all these ways of understanding words are things that we use every day. These are all everyday things. What our Shastrakaras have done is they have merely delineated and pointed out the process of what is going on in our heads as we understand them. And then what that allows us to do is, rather than these becoming unconscious processes, these become tools that we can use to extract meaning from things that we do not understand. So that is why all this explanation is done. So this is Jahat Swartha or Jahat Lakshana, wherein the words normal meaning is completely set aside and a new meaning is taken upon. Now, the next one you have is Ajahat Swartha. Ajahat Swartha means it does not let go of its meaning, but yet it keeps its meaning and takes upon some more meaning. For example, there is one sentence like Shono Dhavati. Shona means red. So red runs. Shono Dhavati, red runs. Obviously, the color red is incapable of running. So what we understand is there is Shonaha Ashwaha Dhavati. The red horse is running. So what that word red does is it keeps the meaning red, right? Redness is still there in the horse. So it keeps the meaning red and adds the meaning of the horse to it. So Shono Dhavati means Shonashwaha Dhavati. Shono Dhavati means Shonaha Dhavati means Shonashwaha Dhavati. Red runs means the red horse runs. Maybe a less shastric example, but right, if you say a very common thing, if you say I am betting on black, right? It is a very common phrase that you hear, whether or not you bet or not. If you say I'm betting on black, you're not betting on the color black. You're betting on the, I don't know, black coin, black horse, black number, whatnot. So in that, when you say I'm betting on black, you're not betting on the color black, but something that has the color black. Same thing, Shono Dhavati, red runs. So it is not the color red that is running, but something that has the color red that is running. So the word Shona here, which means red, does not relinquish the meaning which is red, but also adds, it just adds another meaning to it, which is the meaning of horse. And now we have the third one, which is Jahad Ajahal Lakshana, meaning the word lets go of some of its meaning and takes upon some of its meaning. So it is a partial, it is like a 50-50. And this is the place where we see the Vakyartha come into play of Tattvamasi. Like if you take Tattvamasi, right? Tat Tvam Asi, you have two things. You are that. This Tat and Tvam, obviously, the Ishvara and Jiva cannot be the same, right? Because Ishvara has certain great qualities and the Jiva has certain great qualities. So these cannot be the same. So we have to use now this Jahara Jahal Lakshana. What is this? So the example is Soyam Devadattaha is the sentence that is given as an example. Saha Ayam Devadattaha. Saha means him. Ayam is this Devadatta. Devadatta is the common name given to some example. If you're using any human as an example, you will name him Devadatta in Shastra, or Chaitra or Maitra or something. Devadatta, Yajnadatta, Chaitra, Maitra. These are the standard, you know how we have in old Indian textbooks, Rama has 3 fruits, Krishna has 4 apples. How many apples did Rama and Krishna buy? So in every math problem, you will be named Rama or Krishna. In every problem, just names that you give. Or in here Tom has 5 apples, some Harry has 6 apples. How many apples do Tom and Harry have? Like these names, like that. Devadatta is just a name that is given. So that is this Devadatta is what you have said. For example, you have not seen your friend in a while, and you see your friend after 10 years, and you show your mom, Amma, this is that roommate, or this is that roommate I was telling you, this is that friend I was telling you about. Same way, Soyam Devadatta. This is that Devadatta. So who is the this referring to? This is referring to Devadatta in the current time and current place. That Devadatta, this is that Devadatta. That refers to whom? Devadatta in a past time in a different place. Let's say Devadatta is someone you knew in India and you met him in the US. You met Devadatta in India in 2000 and you met Devadatta in the US now in 2022. So Saha means Devadatta in India in 2000. I am Devadatta is Devadatta in 2022 in America. So Taddesha Tatkala Vishishta Devadatta. So Devadatta of that time and that place is the Saha part. Devadatta in this time and this place is I am Devadatta. Now, obviously, someone you cannot be in that time and this time at the same time. You cannot be in one place and another place at the same time. So this Saha and I am are two different things, right? That Devadatta and this Devadatta are two different times and two different places, but you are saying so I am Devadatta, right? They have Samanadhikaranya. They have the same Vibhakti, Linga and Vachana. So what you end up doing is, for the Saha part, right? We said Devadatta in that time and that place. You shave off the time and place and leave the Vyakti of Devadatta. You keep the individual who is Devadatta. In the same way, you take the present time, present day Devadatta, shave off the time and place, and keep the individual Devadatta. Now, this individual and that individual are the same, is what we mean when we say that, right? So when we say this is that Devadatta, this Devadatta is Devadatta here and now. That Devadatta is Devadatta there and then, right? So you shave off the there and then aspect, leaving the individual. You shave off the here and now aspect, keeping the individual. And what you're saying is this individual and that individual are the same. In the same way, what you do with Jiva and Ishvara is Jiva, you shave off the Kinchidnya, shave off the Alpashaktiman, and you keep Chaitanya Matra, and only the Chaitanya of the Jiva. And then for Ishvara, you shave off the Sarvajna, Sarvashakti, Jagat Karana. You shave off all of that and keep only the Chaitanya. This Chaitanya and that Chaitanya are the same. So thus our Vedantins have shown that Jiva and Brahma Aikya is possible. This is what Shruti means. And then, there's also the Shadvidha Linga. So you look at the text and see what, for example, Tattvamasi, the passage starts with Sadeva Somyedam Agrasi. Then there is repetition of Tattvamasi, which comes 9 different times. It is called Navakritvopadesha. So with all these literary facets, you can show that, Tattvamasi points to the Jiva and Brahman being one. So in all these different ways, I just told you this to show how Vichara is done. In all these different ways, you need to do Vichara of how this Vedavakya is properly interpreted. So that is Vakyarthascha Vichariyatam. Then Shruti Shiraf Pakshas Samashriyatam. So understand what the teaching of Vedanta is in the end, right? There's a saying in Telugu, Ramayana Vante Vinnaka Ramudiki Sita Mautunanje Padigadu ani cheppi. So one person sat and heard all of Ramayana. In the end, he asked, so what is Sita's relation to Rama? Right? This is called Mulaghati Panditya. You study so much that you forget the purpose of why you're studying. So once you're done doing this Vakyartha Vichara, once you're done understanding what Veda is trying to tell you, you need to come to terms with what the Vedanta's point is. So this Vakyartha Vichara is to help you understand Jiva Brahma Aikya, right? If you do this and come out talking about, this word and that word, that you have missed the point. So do the Vakyartha Vichara, but make sure that it is pushing you towards the Jiva Brahma Aikya and towards the Vedanta Jnana that is taught by Upanishad. So Shruti Sharaf Paksha. Paksha means Siddhanta. So understand the Vedanta Siddhanta. Siddhanta is the final conclusion. Right? So do Vakyartha Vichara and understand the conclusion of Vedanta. Then these next two parts are probably the next part where I'll talk a bit about Shastra. Dustarkat Suviramyatam. So Bhagavad-pada is telling us to cease and desist from Dustarka. So in several places, you will see Bhagavad-pada speak against Tarka, speak against logic. Right? There is a very famous shloka in Shivananda Lahari. Ghato va mritpindo pyanurapi cha dhomo agnirachalah pato va tanturva pariharati kim ghora shamanam pratha kanthakshobham vahasi tarasa tarka vachasa padam bhojam shambhor bhaja Paramasaukyam vraja sudhihi. Oh Sudhi, oh wise man, you waste your time with these long, complicated logical statements. Tarasa tarka vachasa. You do all this logical reasoning, you're wasting your time with it. Ghata mritpinda, pot and mud. Basically, he's pointing out all the main examples that are used in tarka. Ghatova mritpindopi. So whether, ghata mritpinda anu, pots, clay, mud, atoms, all of this. Dhumaha, agnihi, achalaha, smoke, mountain, fire, all of these. Then patova, tanturva, the cloths and the threads, these are all things that are used to show karya, karana, bhava, vyapti, anumana. These are the classic examples of all of these. You waste your time with all of these. Pariharate kim ghorashamanam. We all of this stop Yama when he's knocking on your door. Same thing as nahi nahi rakshati dukri karani, right? Yama is ready. He's ready to come throw his pasha on you and take away your life. You really think if you say, sadhya bhavi vyapaka, sahita achena kachena, do you think all of this will save you? Do you think all of these logical statements will save you? This will not stop Yama in any way. So instead, what you do is Padambhojam Shambhora Vraja, seek refuge in Bhagavan's feet, namely Bhagavan here being the Ishvara, Atma. So no Atma, Paramasaukyam Vraja, that is where you will find the utmost happiness, not in these Tarkavachanas. So now we come to a doubt that does Bhagavatpada not want us to use Tarka? If that is the case, then we have a big problem. Because any philosophy that tells you not to use Tarka is in very big problems. Several religions around the world have that problem where, they for some reason completely forgo Tarka in their philosophical reasonings. But Sanatana Dharma is not like that. Tarka is very important. There's a reason why so many people have spent so much time, poring over these books of Tarka and making sure that Tarka is firm. So actually my Tarka guru's guru used to say, Navayam Tarkashastradhyanam pratishedhamahe parantu tat paratam, is what my Tarka guru's guru used to say. Navayam Tarkashastradhyanam pratishedhamahe parantu tat paratam. We do not tell you to not study Tarka. We tell you to not study Tarka for Tarka's sake. The point of your studying logical reasoning should not be for the sake of logical reasoning. It should be for the sake of understanding Vedanta properly, which is why Bhagavad-pada says immediately, do not leave Tarka. Shruti mataha tarkaha anusandhiyatam. Make sure that you are applying Tarka in accordance with Veda, is what Bhagavad-pada is saying. Right? So now what is this dustarkat suviramyatam? So now how do I know which Tarkas I am supposed to relinquish myself from? Right? Or which Tarkas am I supposed to avoid? So dustarka means dushtaha tarkaha. Dushto tarkaha, dushtas tarkaha, dustarkaha. So tarka that is dushta. So number one, we can take dushta to mean just evil, right? There are some people who we call vitandavada. Vitandavada is you do not care if what you're saying is right or not, but you will you're just trying to argue for the sake of arguing. That kind of logic we do not need, right? And the other reason why he's saying this is in Tarka Shastra itself, the Tarka Darshana, right? It is a Darshana. Nyaya and Tarka are both Darshanas. Nyaya is propelled by Gautama Maharshi, Akshapada, and the Karnada Mata, the Vaisheshika Mata is propelled by Karnada Maharshi. They are the drashtas of those darshanas, the pravartakas of those darshanas. Then in time, I think in 11th or 12th century, these were merged into Navina Tarka by a great Pandita named Gangeshwapadhyaya. So since then, Tarka or Nyaya refers to this conglomeration of Navina Nyaya. So in any case, this Nyaya, this Darshana, right, is a Darshana. So it's a philosophy in its own right. It's not just a system of reasoning. It is also a philosophy in its own right. So this philosophy has several things that differ from Vedanta and its conclusions. For example, these people say, Jnana Adhikaranam Atma. The Atma is the repository of cognizance or of Chaitanya. Whereas we say Jnana Swarupam Atma. Atma is Jnana. Atma is of the nature of consciousness. In the same way, these the Nayayikas accept Anyathakhyativada. Anyathakhyativada. So they take if you let's say you see a shell and you think it is silver, Anyathakhyativada means you have seen silver before in a shop. That silver in the shop is what is being seen in the shell right now. That is why you have mistakenly seen the shell as silver. What Vedantins say though is, what Advaitins hold is Anirvachaniya Khyati. There is no way of telling whether the silver you have seen is completely real or completely unreal. Because Satchet na pratiyeta, asatchen satchen na badhyeta, asatchen na pratiyeta. If it is something that does not exist, like a rabbit's horn, you should not see it at all. If it is something that is absolutely real, like Brahman, it should never be sublated. It should never be badhita. It should never be understood as Brahma later on. So, but you see that, if you think it is silver, you go closer, you pick up the shell, you say, oh, it is a shell, it is not silver. So, therefore, you cannot define it as completely existent or completely non-existent. You cannot define it as Sat, you cannot define it as Asat, right? Sadva, Pyasadva, Tad Bhinnava, right? Bhinnapya Bhinnapya Bhayatmikano, Sannapya Sannapya Bhayatmikano, right? Sangapya Nangapya Bhayatmikano. Adbhuta Anirvachaniya Maya, right? Is the thing from Viveka Chudamani. You cannot tell Sannapya Sannapya Bhayatmikano. Is it existent or is it non-existent? You cannot tell. That is Anirvachaniya Khyati. So all these Khyati Lakshanas, and then Jnana Pramanya, Vedantins and Mimamsakas hold that Jnana is Sataf Pramana, and then they hold that Jnana is Parataf Pramana because of the Anuvyavasayas. All of this is long discussions that our Darshnikas have gone into. It's a lot of fun if you can, if you have the patience and the time to go that far into Nyaya and Mimamsa especially, they're a lot of fun. But we do not have to go into that. The point I'm trying to make is that Nyaya and Vedanta have some differences in their philosophies. But Vedanta is the Paramasiddhanta, right? We are all Vedantins. We believe that Upanishads have the Paramatatparya and everything is an anga to that. So in that case, do not apply those tarkas. Do not apply those tarkas, because see the saying that Jnana Adhikaranam is directly in or directly contradicts what Upanishad says, right? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Jnana and Brahma are used in Samana Adhikarana. So Jnanam Brahma, right? So you cannot say Jnana Adhikaranam. But I mean, obviously it's not like Nayayikas are fools either. They have their own logics to support everything. But from the Vedanta standpoint here, we should only apply the principles of tarka. My Vedanta teacher calls it, we ask him to make a stick, we take it and then we hit him with the stick. We ask the Nayayika to prepare all the logical principles and then we use those against him. It's like the Bhasmasura Hasta, where he gets he gets the vara from Shiva and then tries to use it on Shiva. This is actually a very common theme in our Puranas. So Manmatha asks Brahma, once Manmatha is great, he asks Brahma for weapons. Brahma gives him the bow and the 5 arrows. Manmatha says, will they work? He says, can I test them? Brahma says, sure. First arrow that Manmatha shoots is on Brahma. So like that, we take the tarka paddhati, right? We take the means of reasoning, the principles of reasoning from the tarkika, and then we apply it properly in accordance with Upanishad and Upanishad Siddhanta. The other meaning, this is one meaning of this tarka, that do not take tarka siddhantas that contradict Vedanta or that contradict Upanishad, but rather take their principles and use it in accordance with Upanishad. Another meaning we can take is dushtas tarka, dustarka, right? So there's a very important part of tarka called the Hetva Bhasa Grantha. So Hetu is a cause, right? If you say Parvato Vanhiman Dhumat, the mountain has fire because there is smoke there, right? Where Parvata is the Paksha, Agni is the Sadhya, Vanhi is the Sadhya, and Dhuma is the Hetu. Because I know some of you have messaged me saying you're studying Tarka, so I will Nyaya Shastra, so I will touch this a little bit as well. In the Sthala, Parvato Vanhiman Dhuma Diti Sthale, Tatra Dhumo Hetu. The Dhuma is the Hetu. Right? So in that case, that is a Sadhetu. It is a proper Hetu. Among other reasons, because it has Vyapti. There are several things that go into it being a proper Hetu. But one important thing is it having Vyapti. Vyapti is what Athava Hetumannishta Viraha Pratiyogina Sadhye Naikadhikaranyam Vyapti Ruchyate, right? Sadhye Naikadhikaranyam Hetor Vyapti Ruchyate is the Siddhanta Vyapti Lakshana. Athava Hetumannishta Viraha Pratiyogina Sadhye Naikadhikaranyam Vyapti Ruchyate. Sadhyena Hetor Aikadhikaranyam Vyapti Ruchyate. Athava Hetumannishta Viraha Pratiyogina Hetos Sadhyena Hetor Aikadhikaranyam Vyapti Ruchyate is the Karika there. So in any case, what that Vyapti means is wherever Dhuma is there, Vanhi must be there. There should not be a place where Dhuma is there and the Hetu is not there. So Hetu and Sadhya, so Dhuma and Agni must be together at all times. So if you can say Yatra Yatra Dhumaha Tatra Tatra Vanhi, Wherever there is smoke, then there is fire, then there is something called vyapti there. So vyapti vishishtaha hetuhu, that hetu should have vyapti. So because here, yes, you will have dhuma wherever there, you will have agni wherever there is dhuma. Therefore, you can use dhuma, you can use smoke to prove fire. Now let us look at an asadhetu, right? If you say parvato dhumavan vanhehe, the mountain has smoke because there is fire. This is an asadhetu because there is no vyapti there. Because there is no rule that yatra yatra vanhihi tatra tatra dhumaha. There is no rule that smoke has to be there wherever fire is there. The example they give is you heat up an iron ball. There is fire there, but there is no smoke there. So you can have fire without smoke, but you will not have smoke without fire. Tatra ardrendhana sanyogaha upadhi. So there's a whole thing. The upadhi grantha is also a very important part. But the point being, so now this hetu, right? This reason of the mountain has fire because of dhuma. So dhumat iti panchamyanto hetu. So the dhuma becomes the hetu. This becomes an asad hetu. So this means it is a dushta hetu. The reason why I say this is because dushta tarkaha is the vigraha of dustarkaha. And in tarka specifically, dushta refers to it being a hetva bhasa. Hetva bhasa means that it appears as if it is a hetu, but in reality it is flawed. So what Bhagavad Pada is saying here is when you do your tarka prayogas, when you apply all your anumanas and when you do all your reasoning, make sure that it is free of these hetva bhasas. That is another thing that he is talking about. Make sure that it is free of these doshas like avyapti, which I just talked about, ashraya siddhi, swarupa siddhi, or vyabhichara, or satpratipaksha or badha. Make sure it is free of all these hetva bhasha doshas. So make sure that the tarka you are using is error free. Okay, so that is the point I'm going to make. I wanted to show you the taste of the Shastra, but the point to take from this dustarka suviramyatam is use tarka in Vedantic service. Do not take the parts of tarka that disagree with Veda, is basically what Bhagavad Pada is saying here. And also, when you use tarka, make sure that the tarka reasoning that you're using itself is clean. If you want to take something away from that last 10-minute spiel I just did, that is what to take away. Then Shruti-matas tarkaha anusandhiyatam. So kind of to augment this, use tarka in accordance with Shruti, right? In there is a saying, right? Shrutya virodhini smritif pramanam. In the same way, Shrutya virodha tarkaf pramanam. The tarka that does not contradict Veda outright is pramana for us. So make sure that you are using tarka in accordance with what Upanishad says and what Veda says. Because for us, remember, Shabda is a very high pramana. Right? Veda pramanya, actually, we could have talked about it a bit more maybe in the first day. And maybe I will use it when I record, I will talk about it a bit more. But Veda has very great pramanya for us, right? It supersedes everything else. So make sure that the tarka, whatever reasoning you do, is in line with Veda. Then, Brahmasmi iti vibhavyatam. So now that you have done the vakyartha of Aham Brahmasmi, right? Of Mahavakya such as Aham Brahmasmi. And now that you have gone through the tarka portion of it. One more thing to say here. Tarka is very important for Vedanta generally, right? Which is why a lot of acharyas tell us to do, tarka abhyasa as well. If you want to know Vedanta Siddhanta in itself, you don't really need tarka. If you want to go into Vedanta Shastra, then you need tarka. Tarka plays the role of manana, right? We say the 3 steps, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, right? The 3 steps of Vedanta. Shravana, we talked about yesterday, hearing, learning what the Siddhanta is, right? What is Vedanta saying? Then Manana is Yuktibhir Anuchintanam Mananam. Supporting or reinforcing what you have learned with logic, right? Does what I have just learned make sense? What is the logical reasoning for what I have just learned making sense, right? Kathamidam upapadyate. How does this reasoned out? That is mananam. And then nididhyasanam is then internalizing that and putting it into practice. Now, Udayacharya writes, Nyaya charcheya meshasya manana vyapadesha bhaka upasanaiva kriyate shravananantaragata. He says, Nyaya charcheya meshasya manana vyapadesha bhaka upasanaiva kriyate shravananantaragata. So, Nyaya charcha, this study of Nyaya, Ishasya manana vyapadesha bhak. This plays the role. Vyapadeshyate anena iti vyapadesha. So mananam iti vyapadeshyate iyam tarka charcha. So this tarka charcha, the study of Nyaya, is what is called as manana. In the Shravana Manana Nididhyasana sequence, this Nyaya of Ishvara is what is called manana. And it is Shravananantaragata. It is the step to be taken immediately following Shravana. Why? Upasana iva kriyate. Because it is done like Upasana. In Upasana, how it is a constant process to understand the object that is the focus of meditation. In the same way, doing this Nyaya Charcha helps you work out the kinks in understanding this Upanishad properly. And thereby understanding the Jiva Brahmaikya properly. So, right after you have done all this proper reasoning, then after that, Brahmasmi iti vibhavyatam. Experience, do nididhyasana that I am Brahman. And aharaha garvav parityajyatam. So, this garva here is not pride in the sense of arrogance. This garva refers to eventually, as you think, I am Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, right? Chidananda Rupaha, I am of the Swarupa of Chaitanya, I am not Manobuddhyankara Chittaninaham, Nacha Shrotra Jihve, Nacha Grahana Netre, Nacha vyoma-samskrta-pathasala Natejo Navayu, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I am not the mind, right? I am not the body, I am not the Antahkarana, I am not the Panchabhutas, I am the pure Chaitanya. That is the Brahmasmiti Vibhavyatam that you're doing. You're keeping on meditating and telling yourself, trying to force that understanding that I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the senses, etc., etc., etc. And then aharaha garvav parityajyatam. So as you do this, right, you have done some study. You have done some study that is leading you to say, okay, now I must think that I am studying this. I must think that I have done this this tarka study. I must think that I have done this tarka application. I am doing the manana of aham brahmasmi. I am doing nididhyasana of aham brahmasmi. So this jnanitva abhimana is what the Vyakhyakarya wrote here. Very beautiful reason, because right after this you have the deha abhimana. You cannot have the deha abhimana here as garva. And if you say garva is pride, that doesn't make sense here, because then you have buddhajanirvadav parityajitam. That arrogance is taken care of there. So here this garva refers to the jnanitva abhimana, that feeling that I am knowing something, right? We talked about the dhyana, dhyatra, dhyeya, right? The meditator, meditation, and the object of meditation merging. So what this is the meditator should remove the thought that I am meditating upon something or I am doing meditation. That feeling that I am jnanitva abhimana means I am the doer of knowledge, right? You want to be aham jnana swarupaha is what you want, right? Satyam jnanam anantam brahma, aham jnana swarupaha. This is the sequence you want to go through. So Brahman is of the nature of jnana. I am Brahman. Therefore, I am of the nature of jnana is what you're trying to do. Now, if you say, I am experiencing the jnana of the nature aham brahmasmi, or I am experiencing the jnana that has been achieved through this tarka, then you are once again separating yourself from the jnana that you're supposed to become one with, from the chaitanya that you're supposed to become one with. So relinquishing the I-ness towards that knowership, right? You're renouncing knowership to become one with knowledge. Knowing is what it is. So that is the garvav parityajyatam. And one thing, this nididhyasana, how is it supposed to be done? When am I supposed to do brahmasmiti vibhavyatam? Every now and then when I feel like it? No, aharaha. Every day, pratidinam, right? That is why Bhagavad-pada wrote the pratasmaranam, pratasmarami hridisam sparadatmatattvam. Bhagavad-pada says, as soon as I wake up, the first thing I need to think of is this, I need to think of the Atma is the number one thing I need to think of when I wake up in the morning, because this nididhyasana needs to happen all the time. So that is the nididhyasana needs to happen every time, and the jnanitva abhimana, the I-ness of knowership needs to be renounced. Then dehe hammati rujyatam, the I-ness that you feel towards the body also needs to be released. Now the body we generally think is karacharanaadya avayava vishishta shariraha, vishishta deha is what we generally think, right? The hands, the legs, the head, the body, the torso, that is what we think is the body. We have another body, the sukshma sharira. So tatra pancha jnanendriyani, pancha karmendriyani, pancha pranascha, antahkaranancha, right? These are this forms the sthula, the sukshma sharira. The 5 karmendriyas, the 5 jnanendriyas, the antahkarana, the inner organ, the inner indriya, the mind, and the 5 pranas. This all combined forms the deha, the ahammati in the deha. And all of us have this in some way or the other, right? If you ask a little kid, who are you? He'll say, I. He will point to the body because to him he is the body. When we say things like ahankanaha, ahambadhiraha, ahamandhaha, ahampanguhu, there you say I am blind, I am deaf, right? Or I am mute, I cannot walk, I cannot see. Then the I-ness is placed in the indriya, right? The I cannot see, so you say I cannot see, not E-Y-E-I. If the E-Y-E cannot see, you say I, the letter I cannot see. Aham cannot see. If the netra cannot see, you say aham cannot see. If the chakshurindriya cannot see, you say I cannot see. In the same way, if the ear can't hear, you say aham nashrunomi, aham badhiraha. If the leg cannot walk, you say aham panguhu, right? So in some cases, the aham mati, aham iti matihi, right? The feeling of I-ness is placed in the indriyas in some cases. If you say aham bubhukshuhu, aham pipasuhu, like that, if I am hungry, I am thirsty, then the I-ness is placed in the pranas because ashana pipasadi dharmaha pranasya sambhavanti. So the feelings of hunger and thirst are the prana dharmas, or qualities of the prana. So when you say I am hungry, I am thirsty, then you are placing your I-ness in the prana. So all of this kramakramena, all of this I-ness needs to be relinquished. So for this, Upanishad has given us things like Panchakosha Viveka, where you say, I am not the Annamaya Kosha, I am not the Pranamaya Kosha, I am not the Manomaya Kosha, I am not the Vijnanamaya Kosha, I am not the Anandamaya Kosha even, but I am the Kevala Ananda that is within that. That is the Puchha, Brahma Puchham Pratishtha, that is the Pratishtha for the Anandamaya Kosha. So in such, or the Avasthatraya, which is given in Mandukya, right? I am not the person I am not the body which works in the Jagrada Avastha, the Sthula Sharira that works in the waking state. I am not the Sukshma Sharira that is the only one that is left in the dream state, in the Sapna Avastha. I am not even the Avidya Vrittika Ananda that is there in the deep sleep state, but I am the Sakshi to all of this. I am the Chaitanya that is present through all of these. So with all of these ways of reasoning, kramakramena, you need to relinquish the I-ness, the abhimana that you feel in the body. Dehe ahammatihi ujjatam, may it be left off. And then, so now, to get to this state, we have just said you have to go through great study, great scholarly training, or great days and hours and weeks and years spent in japa or tapas, doing dhyana and upasana and manana. Right? So all of this takes time, effort. So in such states, a sadhaka might be tempted to go set up vadas just to prove their panditya, just to prove their scholarship. That is what Bhagavad Pada is telling the sadhaka to not do. Do not argue for the sake of argument. So do your sadhana happily, you do your work. Do not argue with people unnecessarily. Now when people like Bhagavad Pada or Madhusudana Saraswati and Appaya Dikshita and all of these people do Vada Granthas or Vadas and things, that is different because they're doing it for the sake of the Siddhanta and for the sake of Loka Kalyana, right? Because Bhagavad Pada felt that the Vedanta Jnana is the way for everyone to achieve moksha, which is the ultimate state of happiness and sukha and the ultimate kalyana, mangala. So therefore, he showed calmly, without any ego towards that, he argued for the sake of the Siddhanta. Mandana Mishra also argued only for the sake of the Siddhanta, which is why once Mandana Mishra saw that Bhagavad Pada Siddhanta was correct, he had no problem switching over. If you look at today's debates, presidential debates, right? You can beat the other fellow black and blue, but he will not agree to anything you say, even if you tell him that 2 + 2 is 4. Right? So that is not the case. They are not arguing with egos. They are arguing for the sake of, it is not even an argument, it is not a jalpa. It is a samvada. It is a discourse, a dialogue between two philosophies to see which of these actually holds up the best, which of these is actually true. So that vada is different. Bhagavad Pada is talking here about vada, which is argument, pointless argument. Do not argue just because they say Panditya Kanduti. Kanduti means itchiness, Durada. So do not just argue because you have some itchiness to show your Panditya. Just do your own sadhana, do your own vichara. Once you are realized, then we will talk about that then. Nando Raja Bhavishyati. We will see then. Do not worry about that now. So to sum it up, Vakyarthascha Vicharyatam. Understand what or how the Mahavakyas should be understood. Go about understanding the Mahavakyas properly. Shrutisharaf Pakshas Samashriyatam. Understand the Siddhanta, the findings, the holdings of the Upanishads. Dustarkat Suviramyatam. Do not misuse tarka, apply tarka appropriately. Do not apply tarka in in opposition to Veda, and make sure that the tarka you're applying is free of error. Shruti matas tarkonu sandhiyatam. Same thing. Make sure. So this is the vyatireka of this. So make sure that the tarka you're using is in line with Veda. Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam. Do nidhyasana. Feel, believe that you are Brahman. Try to bring yourself to that understanding. Do that every day, daily, without fail. Garvav parityajyatam. Let go of the ego of knowership. Deheham matirujyatam. Remove your ego from the body. Stop thinking that I am the body. Remove your locus of identity, is what it's called. Locus of the ego locus. Remove the I-ness from the body and understand that the I that you are is truly Chaitanya, pure Shuddha Chaitanya, pure Chaitanya. And Buddhajanair Vadav Parityajyatam. Do not get entangled in vadas and arguments and this and that. Do your own sadhana without any argument with wise people and with panditas and with other people. Okay, so I know today was a bit of a heavy class, but this last quick meaning, if you could take that away, I think we have done our job properly. But nonetheless, if you have any questions about the Shastric aspects I talked about, or questions about the aspects that I just talked about in the end, let us open it up for questions. Yeah, Buddhajanair Vadav Parityajyatam, right? Parityajati, to leave, Parityajyatam, may it be left. May argument with wise people be left aside. Yeah, do not argue with Panditas unnecessarily. That is what is saying. Yep, that is the meaning of that. S.R. Valluriji, you can speak.
Namaste, Mahodaya.
Namaste.
As you said, today is very heavy lecture, and very, very much, very fantastic and very confusing also at the same time.
Yeah.
And my question is that our ultimate aim is moksha,
Yes.
to reach the God, to reach myself, Aham Brahmasmi, to realize that in the full understanding.
Certainly.
But what we are talking is through jnana, I think.
Yes.
But
is it?
Yeah, is it necessary for a person to know all these things, because our knowledge is limited, our time is limited, and with all these things, is it possible for any person to pursue this line of action and reach ultimate, or is there any other way? Because it requires Shankara Mahatpada is a jnani, is a infinite intelligence and all that.
Right.
So we are very small, but at the same time, applying the logic, I am not small. I am also like that. But to reach that, to know that, I will do the practice. Is it possible for me? Is it possible for a common man to do, or is there any other way?
Right. A very, very beautiful question, very important one, right? So the question is there a way for, Samanya Janas, for, people like us, everyday people, to understand Brahman without, breaking our head over all of these confusing shastras and doing all these things that take a lot of time and effort that we may not necessarily have in our day-to-day lives, right? That is the question, if I understand it properly.
Yes.
Yeah. So, a very neat question, and Veda itself says, Naisha Tarkena Matirapadeya is what Upanishad says. You will not reach this conclusion through logic. And actually Upanishad itself says, Yame Vaisha Vrunute Sa Tasya Bhavati. This knowledge needs to choose you.
I thought you would simplify my question, and you are giving an answer which is more complicated than what than before.
No, so the thing is, right, we need to understand.
Yeah.
So what Bhagavad Pada is describing here is the ideal way. So, 100% focus, absolute, you have as much time as possible. You are an intelligent sadhaka. So what Bhagavad Pada is describing here is the ideal way. So if you could do whatever you absolutely really can do, you can do all this, that is fantastic. Otherwise, this is why I said we will have to pick and choose parts of the sadhana panchaka for us to use in everyday life. So that is why for us, we cannot go through all of this, which is why we generally take the upasana plus karma yoga route. The pure jnana marga is very hard for us to do because it requires a lot of mental focus, a lot of intellectual focus, and all this time. Which is why Bhagavad Pada, the system that he set, and not just Bhagavad Pada, a lot of acharyas afterwards in their respective Vedantic fields as well. That is the reason why their focus for the normal people is generally on karma and upasana. Worship Bhagavan, do your karma. So over course of time, you will receive a clean mind. Through upasana, you will attain familiarity with the Atma Tattva. And once the Guru's Upadesha happens, then your highway is kind of cleared. Because what the Guru can then do, or what you yourself can then do, is you can pick and choose the parts of Vedanta itself that you need to understand. You do not need to understand the why it is like this, right? So, Aham Brahmasmi, if your Guru explains, this is Brahman, this is Asmi, understand that you are Chaitanya, here's the mental exercise that you can do to get there. And you can do that. You say, okay, I have been meditating upon, whatever Vishnu or Shiva as having these qualities until now. So I'm familiar with the qualities of Atman, of Brahman. So now I can just apply that, and then that is it. Ideally, that is for us, that is the highway to take. But, if there is a chance that somewhere along the way, you can say, how on earth is it possible that I can be Brahman? This just does not make sense, right? How can I understand this? And then you will set Veda aside. Out of fear that this may happen, what our Shastrakaras did is they made a pakatbandi vyavastha. They made an ironclad framework so that these conclusions are inescapable. So you can just take the conclusion if you have that much faith and Shraddha. But if you ask, how did you come to this conclusion? You better have a good framework, a support system to say, this is why this is the proper conclusion. So that is where these Shastras come into play. And they call it Utpata Khanana Nyaya, right? So if you are planting a pole in the ground, right? If you just stick it into the ground, it is very easy to push it over. But if you push it back and forth as you work it into the ground, the pole stands very firm. So what all these Shastras do is they will push it back and forth. They test the mind as the mind reaches its conclusion, so that when the mind reaches the conclusion, it will be iron firm. It does not have to happen, but it is kind of a safeguard if we get a doubt. If we have that faith in Veda and Ishvara, in the Guru, in our Sampradaya, in our system, and in ourselves, then you do not have to go through all of these mind-breaking takkas and miyamsas and vyakaranas to get to the Vedanta sadhana. Which is why Bhagavad Pada started with what we need to do as brahmacharis and grahasthas. Study, the basics of Shastra. At least we need to know what Vedanta said. Even if we don't study Tarka and Mimamsa and Vyakaran and all that, we need to at least know what Vedanta said. So the study of Vedanta, performance of karma properly, doing proper upasana, having bhakti towards Ishvara, following certain restrictions and regulations in our lives, having some rigidity, having some rigor, all of that. This is all we need to do in terms of our progress in this. And, over time, we will get to that moksha. So that is the long answer to your question.
Dhanyavad, namaskar.
Can you display the simple summary of each shloka so that we can follow the deep teaching in the class? Yeah, so that is why kind of what I'm trying to do in classes. In the beginning, I'm kind of telling you the short meaning. I'm doing the kind of expanded meaning in the middle, and then kind of shortening it again in the end. Displaying the summary of each shloka. I will see, because I'm trying to think of how I can do that, given that we only have 1 day per shloka, and given that I would like to go in depth if that is possible for shlokas, I will try to do that. But maybe I will just spend more time in the beginning firming the simple meaning of the shloka, and then we can go into more deep meanings. I think after this, the next shloka is relatively straightforward. The last shloka again has some vicharas in it, but sure, I will take that into consideration. Can you explain about the 5 jnanendriyas and the 5 karmendriyas, as I could not understand the difference? Okay, yeah. So simple, right? So the first, where is this question coming from? When I said the dehe ahammati rujyatam, I said that the sthula sharira is the gross body and the sukshma sharira is comprised of the 5 jnanendriyas, the 5 karmendriyas, the 5 pranas, and the antahkarana. So therefore, the question is, what are the 5 jnanendriyas and the 5 karmendriyas, and what are their differences? So the karmendriyas are the indriyas that are used to do things. The jnanendriyas are the indriyas that are used to know things. That is why they are named that way. The jnanendriyas are indriyas that are karanas of jnana, that are instruments of knowing. The karmendriyas are things that are instruments of karma. Karma is kriya, of action. So the karmendriyas are vak, pani, pada, payu, upastha. Vak, speech, pani, the hand, pada, the foot, payu, the excretory organ, upastha, the reproductive organ. So which respectively, vak, the action it does is speaking, pani, taking or putting, pada, walking, pani, pada, payu, excretion, and upastha, reproduction. These are the karmas that they do. These are the karmendriyas. The 5 jnanendriyas are chakshu shrotra, ghrana, rasana, tvak. Tvak, shrotra, jihva, ghrana, jihva. Right? So tvak, the skin, not. So there is an identification that is made between the indriya and what is called the golaka. So the golaka is the physical appendage that is the adhikarana, that is the locus of the indriya. Okay. So for example, the skin is not the tvagindriya. The tvagindriya is the tvagindriya is the the facet of touch that is situated in the organ, the body part that is the skin. In the same way, the chakshur indriya is the facet of sight that is located in the netra, in the eyeball. In the same way, the shrotrendriya is the facet of hearing that is located in the ear. The reason we make this difference between the eye and the facet of seeing is there are many people that have eyeballs but cannot see, people that have tongues but cannot taste, people that have ears but cannot hear, which is why Shastra makes a distinction between the organ and its power. The power is the indriya. So tvak is the power of touch, right? That exists in the skin. Chakshu is the power of sight that exists in the eye. Tvak chakshu shrotra. Shrotra is the power of hearing that exists in the ear. Tvak chakshu shrotra. Jihva. Jihva is the facet of taste that exists in the tongue. Jihva grahana, the facet of smelling that exists in the nose. So in this way, these are the 5 jnanendriyas. Point 20. Shrutimatatarkonasandhiyatam. And 24. Udhajanirvadah parityajyatam are contradictory. How do you reconcile them? There is no contradiction there per se. Shrutimatatarkaha anusandhiyatam. Anusandhana means you yourself apply. So apply tarka to yourself. There is no need to go out and argue with someone else. So Udhajanirvadah parityajyatam refers to arguing with other people. Shrutimatatarkonasandhiyatam means applying logic for the sake of our own understanding. Swapratipattyartham. For the sake of our understanding, we need to go through the whatever logical exercises that will, Shanka Vigatakas Tarka, they call it. So Tarka, one prayojana of Tarka is it removes any doubts. Right? If you have a doubt, if you can reason your way through it, it'll give you an answer. So like that, the Shrutimata Tarkanasandhana, the application of logic in accordance with Upanishad and with Veda is for our own sake. There is no need to go and argue about it with someone else, is the difference in the two. In the sense of Jivan Muktas and their relationship with Tarka, they do not need Tarka. Many Jivan Muktas have not gone through Tarka even, right? It depends on the Atma Samskara. But yeah, you can, if you're Jivan Mukta, kind of none of this matters. you can do whatever you want. Ko vidhi ko nishedha, right? What is for Jivan Mukta, there is no vidhi or nishedha. The Jivan Mukta, naiva tasya kritena artho na kritena yaha kashtana. There is nothing he has to, there is nothing he doesn't have to do. Because he has known everything that is there to be known, the most important thing that there is to know. So yeah, Jivan Muktas have no need for Tarka.
So you're not uploading all the classes, sir. Only one class is uploaded so far.
I am not sure why, because yesterday's class was recorded. and it should have been uploaded. I will speak to the support team about that.
Thank you.
The lecture on the first shloka is going to be re-recorded probably after this week. And the first one, the one where we're chanting, should have been uploaded. I will follow up with the support team on that. Yeah. Dehe hammati rujyatam. So the sanghi, dehe ahammatihi. Ahammati is an ekapada. Ahammatihi ujhyatam. Dehe ahammatihi ujhyatam. Dehe, in the body. Ahammatihi means, mati means thought. Right? Ahammati, the feeling of I-ness. Ujhyatam, may it be relinquished, may it be left. So dehe ahammatihi ujhyatam. May the feeling of I-ness in the body be left behind, may it be removed. Suviramyatam. Viramyatam. Viramyate means to stop doing something, to pull back from something. Suviramyatam. Sutaram. Greatly, properly, desist from that. Suviramyatam. At viramate means to stop. Viramyate. Viramyata means may it be stopped. So viramyata, may it be properly stopped or appropriately stopped. Yeah. Yeah, vidhyashastu ling lota, right? So it should be, yeah, ling and lot. The vidhi lings, the lakaras. Yep. It's the same thing as vandatam, vandetam, vandantam. That same thing, right? That same lakara. Any further questions? Okay, so if there are no more questions, we will stop the class for today. We will have class again tomorrow. We will see you all tomorrow. We will finish the Chaturtha Shloka, the fourth Shloka. Karacharanakritam va karma va kayajam va shravananayanajam va manasam va paradham vihitam avihitam va sarvametat kshamasva jaya jaya karunabdhe Shri Mahadeva Shambho.
Namaskar.
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 See you all tomorrow.